Just get such great content for a relatively affordable conference. So thanks to all of you for attending and being a part of that, and thanks for allowing me to be here today. So that's about it. You can go home now. It's been great. So to start things off here, I really wanted to touch on one of the workshops. If Kim Schlesinger was here, she'd be proud. But yesterday she gave a workshop on education. And there were a few things that really resonated with me, and to kind of give a nod to her presentation, I wanted to start off with some objectives here. I'm not going to revisit them 3 different times, Kim, but we're going to go over them a couple times. So let's see if we can fulfill these in the half hour to 45 minutes that I have to talk to you. So in this talk, by the end of it, I'm hoping that we'll have a better understanding of how to evaluate great mentors, how to analyze ideal traits of a mentee, and finally, to understand the value in mentorship. And if the wording sounds a bit strange, I'm using Bloom's taxonomy here for whoever was in the workshop yesterday, so I hope Kim's proud. So to start, really some of the motivation behind this talk, I've been to a number of mentorship talks, and it can be a difficult concept or a difficult thing to speak about. But I really wanted to slant this talk towards like a mentee, and really, if you're a mentee, how to get the most out of your mentorship relationships, how to maximize those, and really how to be respectful to your mentor too. The talk has since kind of evolved away from that, but the main theme is still there. And so I guess the question is, what is a mentee? It's kind of a strange word. And in fact, in some dictionaries, it's not even defined. Now, kind of a nod to the title here, when I say mentee, you might think of one of these. It's a sea cow or a manatee, not a mentee. It's, formerly endangered mammal, often prone to banging its head against a glass, much like a real mentee is. But not what we're talking about. A mentee, as I have the definition here, is one who is being mentored. It could be a protege, an apprentice, whatever term you want to use for it, even just a peer that learns from you. I think mentorship takes many different shapes and sizes, and this can range from formal mentorship to just speaking and interacting with someone that you really respect in the industry, or maybe that you work with. There's so many ways to seek mentorship and gain mentorship and provide it to others, I think. So moving forward, just want to touch on a few points as to why you should care about mentorship. If you haven't already experienced it yourself or haven't looked into this, there's certainly a lot to work with here. So I think the first point about mentorship that can really help you excel in your career or help someone else is mentorship allows you to accelerate your learning. So one of the better analogies that I've heard for this is it's kind of like, when you're starting off in web development or design or whatever it is you do, to some extent you're kind of fumbling around in the dark. It's almost like you're in a dark cave and you're hitting rocks and jagged edges and you're not sure where to go. And we all kind of start off from a place of relative inexperience, right? But when you have a mentor or someone to kind of lead you along, it's almost as if there's someone with a flashlight who's grabbing your hand. Whether you're trying to figure out how Webpack needs to be configured or getting feedback on a specific design, having someone there to kind of lead you along and help you out through the bumps and barriers that you experience can be incredible. Not only from a self-esteem perspective, but also just overcoming those blockers and kind of avoiding the headbanging that tends to happen in our industry. Second point, mentorship helps you solidify understanding. So this goes from both sides. If you're a mentor or a mentee, the fact that you have to articulate your thoughts about code or design, something that's as abstract as those two things, it's incredible what that can do for your understanding, and it's really difficult. So it's not something that's easy, but you're gonna hopefully increase that knowledge retention over time. In addition to that, you're gonna foster collaboration. So if this is someone that you're working with, someone that perhaps you look up to and you consider to be a mentor at work, just the interaction that you gain with them is certainly gonna, help you in your working relationship down the road. And along those same lines, developing interpersonal skills. So, I imagine that most of us here, maybe some of us work on teams, software teams, or design teams, what have you, and being able to work with others is an incredibly important trait in this industry. And I think that mentorship, at least in my experience, has absolutely improved my skills in this area. And then finally, career growth. Certainly there are opportunities abound, and establishing a network of mentors and mentees can open many doors for you, and frankly provide you with some insights that other people who don't have a foot in the industry have. So if these don't ring a bell with you or resonate, then I don't know what else to say about why you should care about mentorship. So hopefully it does, but there's a couple tweets here that I wanted to especially get to the first 2 points on this list. And this one here from the Practical Dev, I hope you can read this, but basically the tweet is saying, as a junior developer, which I still am, I felt similarly towards code reviews. I didn't like doing them. I thought, why am I reviewing code written by senior developers? It's not like I'm going to catch any of their errors. However, what I didn't understand at the time was that the code review was more for me than it was for them. So it's a junior here saying that, going through code reviews is extremely beneficial to them in particular. And while this junior or entry-level person has a point, I think that there's more to the story than just having it be so one-sided. And Sarah May, in her follow-up tweet, hits on this really well, where she's saying, as a senior dev, I disagree. And basically saying that, if you're writing code that is not understandable to a junior, then that's a problem. And or maybe not a problem, but perhaps a code smell, and perhaps an issue that should be looked at. And there's a lot to gain being an experienced developer or an experienced designer, what have you, in helping someone understand something that maybe you've already built up a mental model of. And this just really resonated with me. So to get back to that question, why should you care about mentorship? In my opinion, the answer, mentorship creates competent developers and stronger teams. Just to boil that down to one quick sentence here. But moving on, wanted to touch on mentors. And there is a particular story that I really like around the lines of mentorship, and I couldn't even tell you how I got to this, other than my affiliation with the Kevin Spacey fan club. I run the React meetup, but I also run a Kevin Spacey fan club. So if you want to join, look us up on Meetup. I'm kidding. But this GIF is great, and the story that goes along with this GIF, so Kevin Spacey has this story that he talks about with the late great actor Jack Lemmon. And I think when he was about 13, 14 years old, he talks about how Jack Lemmon came to one of his productions and approached him after the, whatever it was, the play, I can't remember, and basically told Kevin, hey, you did a great job. You're destined for this. This is what you should be doing, and just gave him the validation that he needed to move forward in his career, and basically, propped him up. And that's when I think about what great mentors do. That's exactly it. It's more of certainly there's an aspect of building trust and helping guide someone along, but I think empowering someone and propelling them up in their career and setting the elevator back down. That's what Kevin really talks about. Is this idea that Jack had so many opportunities and excelled in his career, but he was thoughtful enough and caring enough to send that elevator back down and hopefully provide some of those same opportunities for someone like Kevin who didn't have that. And I think that's a great that's something we should all strive for in our careers, because there are certainly people who come from, less advantaged parts of society and all sorts of different variables that go into that. And as we grow in our careers and as we become more successful, I think it's important for us to realize that setting the elevator back down and helping to prop up some younger, less experienced people is huge. And I've certainly had that in my career and in my short career, mind you, but it's been huge for me. So listen to Kevin on this one. Moving forward, I just wanted to ask for a quick show of hands. I guess who here thinks that they've had a mentor before, whether it's informal or formal? So quite a few people, yeah. And clearly this survey, gets to that point. Mentorship is certainly something that's valued in our industry, and certainly something that's valued in web development as a whole. And as you can see here, this Stack Overflow survey, which I do have a source for in the slides, you can feel free to find that after the fact, but it's something that in our industry, I think it's even understated. And I think clearly there's interest in mentorship, and clearly people have gotten to know things out of it. And I hope that during this talk you can reflect on some of your mentoring relationships and see some things that maybe you liked about your mentors, maybe you didn't like, and use those moving forward. So just wanted to touch on great mentors real quick and some things that I've seen in my career that have really propelled me in some of my mentoring relationships. First thing, I think great mentors build trust, and this is a really interesting one because when you're in a mentoring relationship, especially in web development, I think imposter syndrome runs rampant, and having someone that you can go to, that you trust to speak confidentely and confide in them about certain things, whether it be about your job or about your personal life or something totally unrelated. That's been huge for me, and I know it has been for a number of people that I've talked to on this matter. So building trust, as hard as it is to do, it takes time, but it's a massive component of this. Great mentors are also patient. So patient in teaching techniques. If you have a student that is really having difficulty grokking a certain concept, it takes some communication skills and definitely some patience in getting your message across and making sure that it sinks in. They challenge appropriately. So this is a skill and one that certainly needs to be developed, but having a mentor who's not there just to handhold the entire time, but kind of leads you through that dark tunnel, getting back to the analogy, in a way in which you can learn at the same time, I think is huge and challenges you, but it doesn't just give you the answer whenever you need it. I found that to be incredibly helpful. Great mentors also check in frequently. So I think there's certainly a responsibility for mentees in this regard, but having someone who can be proactive and check in with you, make sure you're doing all right, those are the best mentors I've had, the people that every few months or so come back and just ask me how I'm doing, whether I was on a job search or having trouble with a specific coding problem. That's been huge for me. They're available for questioning, and I just want to kind of asterisk on this one. I'm not saying that you need to be on your computer day and night and have your notifications set on high alert whenever your mentor or mentee, tries to contact you. But certainly being available, trying to keep an eye on any messaging that you might get or helping out with them. That's huge for your mentee. And so make sure if this is something you want to do or if you're considering being a mentor, I think there is a small commitment that needs to be placed on being available. Great mentors put their pride aside, and I found this one to be incredibly important when it comes to empowering your mentees. So the best mentors I've had have not been afraid to say, oh wow, yeah, you're right, that was really interesting how I didn't even know that Redux did this certain thing, or there's so many examples of this where I've had a mentor basically say, yeah, that was interesting, I never thought about it that way. And having someone who can say, I learned something from you too, this isn't just a one-sided thing, this is a relationship that we're both gaining from, makes you feel as a mentee like you're not just wasting that other person's time, and is certainly helpful. And great mentors celebrate victories, and this one has particular importance for me. I am one of those people who can be pretty hard on myself at times, and even when I do make small gains, I tend not to celebrate them. I tend to look at the things that I didn't do correctly as opposed to the minor victories that I've had. And some of the best mentors I've had have kind of allowed me to step back and reflect on the small things that I've achieved. And I can't say enough how helpful that's been, from getting back to empowering, just making your mentee feel more comfortable with the things that they're doing, and whether they're struggling or not, you're still making progress, right? And that should be celebrated. Getting back to empowerment here, this particular tweet rung a bell with me from Emily Short, basically saying that, yeah, just telling your mentees that they're not failing and that they're still making progress is such a huge component of mentorship. And mentorship doesn't have to be a super complicated thing where you know all the answers to technical problems. Part of that can be the fact that the two of you are learning together, and just having a more experienced person there to remind someone that this is natural and that you're still making progress can be huge for that empowerment portion. So now that we kind of touched on some of the mentorship stuff, what might we do if we want to become a mentee? Maybe we haven't practiced this deliberately. Maybe we haven't, done this in our real life. And I think there are ways in which we can be more deliberate about it and practice it. So, first thing, have a growth mindset. For anybody who knows Carol Dweck and her talk on fixed mindsets versus growth mindsets, you know maybe what I'm getting at here, but I think there's a large segment of society who has this idea ingrained that that what they know is what they know, and moving forward, it's that's going to be it for them. Whereas a growth mindset is really this idea that you're constantly evolving, constantly learning. The person you were yesterday is not the person you are today, but that it's just another piece of the puzzle that makes up who you are. And then as we progress and learn more things, we're getting better every day. And so I think there's a conscious attitude shift, and for most people in this room, I get the feeling that most of us are growth mindset, given that we're at a conference where we need to learn things. But I think this is a huge aspect of being a great mentee. Mentees, also, to become a mentee, you need to evaluate the areas that you desire to improve in. So if you want to learn, say you want to become an expert in Redux, or you want to be a great designer, identify the people in your industry, or I guess just make conscious note of that, evaluate that, and move forward from there. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Third point, engage with the community. And I think this is huge in just getting an idea of an understanding of the things that you know and the things you don't know, and getting back to the previous point as far as the things you want to learn. For some of us, it's hard for us to answer that question, especially as we're getting started out in the industry. And for those of you who know the Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know, kind of thing. And as we learn more of these concepts that we don't have an understanding of, it begins to get overwhelming. And engaging with the community helps us, I think, gain a greater understanding of those things in which we would like to learn, in which we see weaknesses in our own knowledge and understanding. And then once we've engaged with the community, I think this fourth point, identifying potential mentors, becomes a lot easier, because you're able to take a close look and say, all right, do I want to become a better developer? Maybe I should attend some meetups. Maybe I should go out of my way to do some hackathons. Do I want to become a better designer? Okay, well, maybe I'll go looking on Dribbble or go to some designer meetups, or there's so many different routes you can take. But in identifying potential mentors, being out and about and being present in the community certainly helps you do that, and it broadens that pool from which you have to choose from. So once you have some potential mentors identified, I think the next step, as difficult as it is just to ask. And I've always been blown away, especially here in Denver, by the kindness and generosity that most people have given me when I've done this, and it's, like I said, it's certainly not an easy thing because you're sticking your neck out there, but in every case, the most negative response I've gotten is just, oh, I'm too busy, sorry, but here I know of somebody who can help you out, let me put you in contact with them. In most cases, people are flattered that you would even ask, and you're almost giving them permission, in a sense, to help you out with the problem. I think so many of us are, especially in the development landscape, are hesitant to offer our services or offer help to some people because we're afraid that we might demean them or make them feel like they don't know something. And while that's certainly, you know, a nice thing to keep in consideration, sometimes just asking for help is, while it's difficult, it's such an important step. And giving that person permission to help you out is huge. And in most cases, it's worked out well for me. So, you know, stick your neck out there. Don't be afraid to ask. They're not going to bite in most cases. So, moving forward, now that you have become a mentee, how might you know, practice this more deliberately and go from good to great here? So my first point, I think that great mentees are proactive, and this gets back to asking and identifying. And I mean, this is something you really have to decide you want to do. I think some of us fall into it naturally, but for most of us, mentors don't come to us. Occasionally it does happen, but if you want to really get the most out of your mentoring relationships, you have to be proactive in seeking them and identifying great mentors, and then going out and, you know, seeing what you can do. And I realize it kind of sounds calculated when I put it that way, but it really doesn't have to be. These relationships are supposed to be genuine relationships where you're both gaining out of it's a two-way street kind of thing, is what I'm trying to say. And being proactive about it is a huge first step and will help you excel in your learning as you proceed with this mentor. Great mentees remain flexible. So many of my mentoring relationships have been informal. Most of them have not been something where I've gone and asked someone, hey, would you like to be my mentor? Usually it's something where I'm having a problem with my code, or I see someone doing something really cool and I just express to them, hey, I like what you're doing, I would love to pair with you sometime, or I would love to get together and discuss some things. Let me buy you a cup of coffee, let me buy you a beer at happy hour, whatever that might be. And so there's some flexibility that goes into this, in that you're asking someone for their time, you're asking someone for their attention, and if you're flexible in how you're able to manage that, it's just more respectful for the person that's going to be taking time out of their day. Along those same lines of respect, great mentees are accountable. So in some of the more structured mentoring relationships I've seen, you know, I know of people that maybe they get together once a week and they go over code problems, or perhaps you go through, say, a technical book together and you have a reading assignment. Well, follow through on those things. Don't say you're going to do them and not do them at all. And certainly there's some accountability from the mentor side as well, but I think the best mentees that I've seen, and I guess when I've maximized those mentoring relationships, it's when I've really been accountable. And if you're someone like me, accountability is a huge motivational driver. And if I say I'm going to do something but don't do it, then I feel like an idiot. And most of us, I think, probably experience that. So I think accountability as a whole in your mentoring relationships can be huge, just from, you know, kind of keeping you on track and keeping you in line with your learning and growth. So great mentees moving forward are also present. Certainly if you're going to be taking some time out of someone's day, whether that be an hour a week or an hour a month or what have you, be present. Because if you're there and you have the 1,000-mile stare and you're not really, you know, in this for the long haul, then what are you doing? You're wasting their time. So this one's fairly obvious, I think, but certainly remaining present is a huge aspect of getting the most out of your mentoring relationships. And the last point that I'm going to touch on here is that great mentees take notes. And I'm not necessarily talking about putting pen to paper and actually taking notes. Certainly you can do that, but I'm talking about making observations and being conscious and getting back to being present, just having an understanding of what works well for you, what are the things in your learning that really help move you along, and what are the things that don't work. And you can take that back to your workplace, you can take that back to your home life, and hopefully you can use those things if you decide to mentor someone in the future. So this may or may not sound scary to some of you. I know that some of us are naturally have some, are more socially out there and more willing to stick our necks out when it comes to mentorship. That said, don't be afraid if this is something that you don't feel comfortable doing. It takes time and it can be really nerve-wracking. So whether you're just thinking about asking someone to mentor you, or maybe you're in a mentoring relationship now and it's not working out that well, don't be hard on yourself. Sometimes these things take time, and perhaps it's time to look for new mentors. But at the very least, don't beat yourself up, because it's not an easy thing to do, as much as it might seem like it. And just remember that we all started from a place of inexperience, right? Even your mentor. So having that understanding and knowing that this is getting back to the growth mindset thing. We're all continuing to progress, and we're all trying to do our best out here. Don't beat yourself up about it, because I know I definitely have at times. It's important to remember that and celebrate your victories. So I hope that you guys have all kind of thought about some of the mentoring relationships that have worked well for you, and perhaps you're a mentor now, or perhaps you're being mentored, or both. But I think that paying it forward is a huge aspect of mentorship, and sending the elevator back down, like I mentioned earlier. So getting back to taking notes, use those observations that you've made from your mentoring relationships, the things that worked well for you, the things that didn't work. And I know everyone's different, so it's going to be different tactics and strategies for every mentee, every mentor, but pay it forward, get out there and try to make yourself available for somebody who might be needing the help that you once did. And don't be afraid to find more mentors or find more mentees, whatever that is for you. I think the networking aspect of mentorship is absolutely huge, and it just kind of compounds over time with getting back to the benefits of mentorship as a whole. So, getting back to our objectives, trying to, Kim, if you're out there, you're proud of me. I hope that we mark some of these boxes off today and just kind of chatting about it. Really my main goal for this talk was to get you to reflect on some of what made your mentoring relationships great. In talking about the observations I made, I realized that different things work for different people, but hopefully there are a few list items here that you can now cross off and have a better understanding of. So with that, I will take any questions if you have any. Yeah.
I'd be curious as to what you think is kind of the balance versus breadth versus depth with mentors. It's kind of something that I've been thinking a lot more about, which is frequency of relationships, and also kind of what you found works for you. You want to talk something about that?
Yeah, so if you didn't hear his question, he asked about breadth versus depth, and I assume you're talking about that as it relates to specific concepts, or?
I think more of it is a lot of mentors and more infrequent relationships,
okay,
versus specific mentors that you have more frequent relationships.
Okay. Yeah, when I reflect on most of my mentoring relationships, I would say it's more of a breadth thing, where I have many people that I look up to that have done things for me in my career that I feel confident and able to, like I said, confide in them and work with them. And certainly having someone outside of work, I think is really important, because you can certainly have mentors at work, and I think that's great, but having mentors outside of work where you can talk about some of the challenges that you confront there is huge. But getting back to the question, I think it can be a hybrid of the two, really, and I've seen that work well for me and others that that I rub elbows with, because what's the limit on the mentoring relationships that you can have? I don't know that there is one, given there's 24 hours in a day. I guess you got to work that in somehow, but I think the two can coexist, basically, and yeah, don't be afraid to expand that out, but also don't be afraid to really sink your teeth in with one particular person that really you've kind of developed that over time with. I've, you know, in the case of Kevin Spacey or anybody else who's had strong mentors, people that I've talked to, some people can point to one person that has really helped them over a number of years. And while I don't have that right now necessarily, like I would love to have that someday where it's been like, yeah, I've been in touch with this person for 2 decades and they're still giving me advice. So I think the two can coexist. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you for coming to my talk. I appreciate it.